In recent years, within the Sahel region, peace and development have been jeopardized by growing internal and cross-border security problems, including armed conflict, serious terrorist attacks, and organized crime. The region has seen a devastating rise in terrorist attacks. The number of victims linked to terrorism in Sahelian countries such as Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso is now 5 times higher than in 2016, when it was estimated at around 800 people. The situation is further aggravated by environmental degradation, poor governance, and the massive influx of migrants from other sub-Saharan African states.
Au Sahel, dans les années 2012, de façon assez violente après ce qui s'est passé en Libye.
From 2012 onwards in the Sahel region, after what happened in Libya and Algeria, like a crisis maturation process, GSPC finally arrived in the region. However, the weakness of the states also increased the problem. The region is vast and hostile, and governments are not present everywhere. All those factors are sufficient reasons for these groups to occupy states' places. Knowing that there are a lot of weapons which escaped from Libya and arrived massively in the Sahel region, we came across a huge lack of preparedness of governments facing this new situation of chaos. This also contributed to crises of what can be called the post-colonial state, which was confronted with a lot of crises like rule of law, lack of transparency in elections, absence of political ideology, as now people seem to be interested only with positions and resources. Because of all these, new religious ideologies that sprout out become hegemonic ones, as we noticed it in Mali. Today, the most horrible conflicts are community conflicts, which means that these communities no longer see themselves in state policies.
Ça veut dire tout simplement que ces communautés ne se reconnaissent pas dans les États.
Beyond security challenges, the Sahel is a real demographic bomb. Indeed, the G5 Sahel countries Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mauritania and Chad will increase from 83,700,000 inhabitants in 2019 to 196 million in 2050. In order to assess the relations between these elements and better respond to the ills of the region, the Regional Office for the West and Central Africa of the United Nations Population Fund has organized a high-level semi-virtual symposium to jointly analyze and reconcile demography, peace and security.
Ces 50 dernières années, la région du Sahel
The Sahel region has been confronted with a lot of challenges over the past 50 years. These challenges have been subject to many initiatives and interventions, but unfortunately, the situation is not getting any better. We are facing a very worrying situation in Central Sahel. We know that ongoing actions are mostly concerned with symptoms of the crisis. Some insist on prevention, while others are bringing solutions to dramatic consequences. That's why we, at a certain moment, decided to think of the profound causes of this crisis so as to identify a theory of change with ways and mechanisms that could help countries solve the problem once and forever. That's why some people even speak about the myth of Sisyphus, where there is an eternal restarting. The objective now is to act in the roots by using available data and evidence to know sources of the problem being faced, a sort of building a tree of problems and identifying its roots that have to be cut in order to definitely solve the problem in the Sahel region.
Qu'il faut couper pour régler définitivement les problèmes du Sahel.
In partnership with the National School of Statistics and Economic Analysts in Dakar, UNFPA conducted a study that highlights significant results. On the one hand, countries with good secondary school enrollment and a high urbanization rate, as well as good agricultural performance, generally have a level of security that is well above average compared to others. On the other hand, in countries with high youth unemployment and inequality in security is increasing. The same is true for countries with growing populations.
Au cours de nos travaux de recherche, nous avons trouvé plusieurs facteurs qui
In our
peuvent
search, we found a lot of problems that could explain the insecurity level within the Sahel region. If we categorize them by groups, we can list the socio-economic and the demographic factors. In the socio-economic aspect, we have the ethnic problems, but also the economic inequalities. Even though there is poverty in the Sahel region, some populations are much poorer than others. So, there are some social inequalities that increase insecurity. There's also a lack of education, as the average educated person is much lower than the world average of educated people, mainly maintaining youth in secondary school. Most of these drop out, become jobless, and the only thing they can do is to indulge in violence. The demographic factors have also been highlighted in our research findings. The number of people supported by one single active person is much higher than in any other region of the world.
Spécifiquement au Sahel par rapport aux autres régions du monde.
Le diagnostic qui a été fait peut être résumé de la façon suivante.
The diagnostic which has been made can be stated as the following. Sahelian problems are not only environmental problems, contrary to the idea which often qualifies the Sahel with drought and lack of agricultural opportunities, etc. Indeed, there are ecological problems in the region, but they are not the only ones or the main ones. There are also the economic problems inherent to the bad insertion of Sahelian countries in the world economy because of extraversion and globalization that profited to other regions of the world and not to the Sahel region. As a matter of fact, these problems are linked with the political economy of the region. There are also other political problems like post-colonial state, which by its size, its vocation and its mission and its intervention means, as well as its interactions with other non-governmental actors like private or civil society organizations. The Sahelian post-colonial state is generally large while not being strong enough to control itself. There is also the question of legitimacy, as these governments are unable to supply to citizens the social services they need or the physical protection that can be expected from a state. There is also the social problem. In the Sahel region, we are in a society characterized by hierarchy and caste, in which the access to resources, power and the right to speak is determined by clinic ascendance rather than by merit. As a matter of fact, there are gender, economic and land inequalities that evolve from a generation to another. The diagnostic we make is that the Sahelian problems should not be tackled in the way they are being addressed, meaning in a monodisciplinary way. To understand the Sahel, we need to question its history, its geography, and the functioning of its political science, etc. The other diagnostic is that some of the problems are old phenomena. I spoke a while ago about the colonial repartition and balkanization of the region, which reminds us of the Berlin Congress in 1885, but also its social structure with caste, which really takes us deep in history. Knowing that these problems are deeply rooted in the society's framework, they have to be identified.
Il faut se donner le temps de les extirper.
These topics are examined in the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals for the year 2030, and in particular in the framework of Goal 16, which introduces paradigm shift in the management of development policies. Thus, the Sahel countries should implement the policies to control demographic dependency and provide opportunities for young people whose level of education, combined with the use of communication technologies, contribute to strengthening their need for emancipation and a better future.
Mais ce qui est évident, c'est que pour parler d'extrémisme violent et de prévention,
to speak about preventing extremism, we need to address the problem in a holistic way. Bringing solutions in the security level is good but not enough. In fact, we need to bring urgent solutions, which is normal. However, there should also be anticipated responses to the issue, while other responses should question the profound causes of this problem of violent extremism. These causes are being evoked during this symposium we're attending now, and there are solutions like supporting the youth that constitute a high rate in society, involving women because they have important roles to play in the framework. We need to take into account what is happening locally, with a synergy of defense and security forces, civilians and communities. The fight against extremism is indeed a long fight, because if you want to address education and unemployment problems, you cannot make it overnight. That's why education is very important in the framework. Not only education to political life, but also to religious life, because extremists use all types of opportunities like economic, social, and religious apertures. There are many ways to tackle the problem, but each and everybody has a role to play in there. And that's how we can manage to find durable solutions, because violence cannot build anything consistent.
Qu'on pourrait arriver à contrer cela et à se rendre compte que la violence ne construit rien du tout.
Mali's geographical position in a Sahel that has been plagued by insecurity for many years exposes the country to ever-increasing security instability. Attacks by armed groups present in the region, including jihadists and community self-defense groups, are intensifying. These attacks are generally carried out in the border area with Algeria, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Thus, Mali has been experiencing a period of instability and conflict since the 2012 military coup and the occupation of the northern part of the country by armed groups.
Ainsi, plus de 60% de la population de la région du Sahel, avec moins de $1 par jour, constitue un défi qui nous interpelle.
More than 60% of the Sahelian population has less than $1 a day, and that's a challenge that concerns all of us. A huge number of women die of avoidable causes linked with pregnancy. While virtues of education are recognized worldwide, millions of Sahelian children are deprived of that right because of conflicts in the region. So are early marriages and early pregnancies, as most girls get married before 18. We have to find out together how to address all these challenges. Unemployment also pushes youth towards migration, while crime, radicalism, exploitation and violent extremism are everywhere in the region. This illegal migration phenomenon is gaining ground and might increase in the coming years if nothing is done, which will have as consequence the destabilization of the region with human tragedies within the region. Some of these youth heading for Europe even die on their way at sea. We need to find out how to restore hope in these youth and make them stay home.
Dans la région du Sahel, la paix est la condition essentielle et fondamentale pour entamer un développement durable.
In the Sahel region, building peace is the only way to construct sustainable development. But this process has been hampered over the past 10 years because of jihadist attacks, community conflicts with a lot of populations exiled or dead. The central region, which used to be the Malian granary, is also affected with thousands of people displaced, thousands of women and young girls deprived of education and health. These groups constitute 75% of combatants among the hopeless youth without any economic opportunity.
Pour le cas du Mali, il est aussi important de souligner que la formation est un élément clé.
For the case of Mali, I will say that education is key to address unemployment and achieve security in the region. And the security is important to build peace, and that's the reason why we are here to launch this message to decision makers and show at the same time that we have to be in the decision-making process regarding challenges we are facing.
Et donc nous demandons en termes de perspective que l'UNFPA et ses partenaires puissent pérenniser ce cadre.
Our recommendation is that the UNFPA makes this initiative sustainable so that we youth will have a platform where we can express our ideas and propose solutions to our problems.
Et proposer des solutions en fonction des maux que nous rencontrons nuit et jour.
In Niger, the government is making significant effort that can't be highlighted because of strong population growth, with average of 3.8% per year, leading to a doubling of the number of inhabitants every 18 years. In addition, terrorist threat and attacks aggravate the security situation in the country and cause displacement of several thousands people, especially women and children.
Comment concilier une croissance démographique aussi forte?
How to reconcile such a huge demographic growth with such a level of poverty to reach sustainable goals? Among objectives fixed by 2030 are elimination of extreme poverty, no hunger and welfare for all, access to education, drinking water, and decent job. How to increase agricultural efficiency in this context of climate change and desertification in the Sahara, how to educate and provide health care and decent jobs to these populations. This is the reason why some analysts, observing our population's curve projection, speak of demographic bombs. That's why there is no time to waste. We need action now. Neighborhood countries succeed in achieving their demographic transition, that's to say from high population growth and high mortality rates to a population with low birth and mortality rates. We need that in order to transform this high demographic growth into a demographic dividend opportunity so that in the long run, the active population within youth will be such more important than the rest of the population.
Plus importante que celle des jeunes et des vieux inactifs.
Quelles sont les priorités? What are the priorities identified in these national consultations? Well, the first point is to reduce the economic and demographic dependence for youth, as you must have already seen it in our monograph in the reference situation. The second point is human capital, women and girls empowerment. The other priority is to provide employment to youth so as to absorb that huge manpower which is still unexploited. In 2015, there were about 250,000 youth who were trained and already ready for employment. There will be 650,000 in 2035, and that's a preoccupation to be taken into account in terms of identifying priorities. We also need to improve the security level within the Sahel region as it's a global problem. We need economic and social infrastructures to develop the region. We also need to integrate the security dimension in our development policies. We need to invest in security. It shouldn't be considered as a single country preoccupation, but as a regional necessity.
Between 1960 and 2020, Burkina Faso's population more than quadrupled from almost 4,830,000 in 1960 to just over 21,510,000 in 2020. Like Mali and Niger, Burkina Faso also faces an increasingly complex security environment. Indeed, since 2014, the country has been subject to increasingly frequent terrorist attacks. Its northern provinces bordering Mali and Niger are particularly vulnerable to the repercussions of the conflicts that are tearing these two countries apart.
Aujourd'hui, tout un village qui quitte pour des horizons X.
When a whole village leaves its soil, you cannot speak about hierarchy and social structure anymore. This disrupts social cohesion so that consequences are enormous. We have also noticed that economic places like markets, some have been attacked and finally closed. Others, which succeeded in resisting, have seen their turnover reduced drastically. And this has a very negative impact on population's life. We have also noticed that many children have left their villages to join terrorist groups. To some extent, this can be an opportunity for those who already were in this larger-scale banditry, while others have been forced to join these groups before attacking their own populations just to obtain revenues. The first priority is to train the youth, because without training, the problems won't be solved. Because training will give them self-confidence and they will be very productive as well. Without training, they're not sure of themselves, which affects their productivity. They also need to be provided with decent jobs. Every youth at the age of 20 needs to have a job rather than being given money every day. The third thing is that we need them to be healthy, because without health, one can't do anything and you become a burden for society.
Through its approach, the UNFPA Regional Office invites international community stakeholders to go beyond the symptomatic treatment that is currently made of the crisis in the Sahel. The solution is to find ways and means to remedy the evil that is plaguing this part of Africa and which continues to worsen.